Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
You get me every time with that thing.
They are going wild. They're going wild outside the studio because they're excited about this week. Episode number 8.
I'm easily amused, clearly.
Well, I can amuse you with other stuff. Here we go.
Okay.
We'll hold that for
later.
later.
Hold that for later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill Fesh, for all these sound effects here for Inside the Arena.
For those of you still listening. No, I'm just kidding. How are you, man?
Good. It's been another busy week off the ice, off the court, off the field of play, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So much going on in Seattle sports. And hang on in just a minute. We're going to bring you our first live guest in this show. He's just awesome. Seattle sports legend, Kenny Mayne. We got a lot to talk about, including his documentary, which is fan-freaking-tastic. And we're going to talk about that in just a couple minutes.
And he's got a lot of history here in the Seattle market. He knows a lot of the players. He's a star of stage and screen. We've seen him at the Sports Star of the Year Awards before. He's made a cameo in the Northwest Regional Emmys. He's a big guy with a lot of history here in Seattle. And we're going to talk with him. We're going to talk more about what's going on in the business side of the sports world. And, of course, our weekly updates on the return of the Sonics. But first, it's that segment that we do every week.
Yes.
4 corners. We touch them all, the good and the bad.
I'm going to get a cheer. I'm going to get a cheer.
In the local world of sports.
Look at this. I want to start with, listen, not that we want to fast forward through our beautiful Seattle summers, the best kept secret. I've actually got some family and friends from around the country in town this weekend. They're like, I thought it rains here. I'm like, just shh, be quiet. No, listen, fall's almost here. Seahawks training camp opening up this week. It's one of those things that we talk so much about, a new era, new coach, all these different things. It's going to look a lot different with a lot of faces not there, like Bobby Wagner, Quandre Diggs, guys we've gotten used to. So I'm just really eager to see how this new era plays out. And we're getting our first look at it. Not that you can tell a ton from shoulder pads and shorts, but it'll be cool to see as we inch closer to the first regular season game. And of course, even sooner than that, the preseason, how Mike McDonald really gets things going. And I'm really eager to see how Geno Smith will play and fare in that Ryan Grubb offense. Can it work wonders for him like it did the guys at UW, although Penix was an exceptional talent? Find out, Chris.
Well, you know what I think is good as well this week is the former Sonic, Brent Barry, Bones. He's taking an assistant coaching gig with the Phoenix Suns, where he's going to be with your old friend from the Syracuse days, the former UW coach, Mike Hopkins. Now, Bones Barry, a lot of people love him. Think back to the 90s, early 2000s Sonics teams. He's been in the Spurs organization for now 6 years. He is now going to go into coaching. And just like Nate McMillan, another former Sonic, getting into the Lakers staff. So it seems like there's going to be a lot of coaches potentially ready for that Sonics team when it actually starts up again.
May even be in the back of their head. Chris, can we do the same? I want to talk about something as we get into the negative side of this. Yeah. I know you're going to talk about this in a second, but the Mariners certainly have just been plummeting in recent weeks. I know you're going to talk about one aspect of it, but I want to take another approach here to the point where I understand the trade market evolves as teams may or may not be in the hunt as we get closer to the deadline in just a few days. But I almost wonder, is it too late at this point? We talk often about the trade deadline, and certainly I'm not necessarily of that line of thought. I think, okay, you have to do something here, regardless of what's going on. But, the question is whether the impact they make by any move next week, is it enough? Is it too late? Is it? I don't know.
Well, you know what's going to happen if the Mariners don't make a move?
Oh, here we go. In late September?
That'll be T-Mobile Park in late September.
I hope not. I still do have faith in this team. I think that certainly the right bats could make that impact to make this a happy ending, but it's tough going right now.
Well, and it's tough to say where this team's going to look like in the rest of this week as we're recording this. They're essentially a AAA team that is being rolled out now at T-Mobile Park with the injuries to Julio and Crawford and now Ty France and what really was an odd move being DFA'd and released, a guy who's been one of the core members, or we thought to be one of the core members for the Mariners in not only this year, but in the next couple of years. So they've switched out a tie for a tie, so to speak, down the street at T-Mobile Park. And it really feels like, boy, if they don't do something here at the deadline, there's going to be an off the field issue here with Mariners fans buying tickets in August and September, a team that is going in the wrong direction, a team that had a 10-game lead. This seems like a do or die moment, a pivot point here for Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander and the staff, and we will see what they do here by the end of this month. That's next week.
I've been saying on the air on KOMO News that it may sound dramatic for a week of games in July, but this could be the most impactful week of baseball games and action off the field for this franchise in years. Depending, if you fall further out of first or what kind of move you make, this week could really determine the course of the franchise for a while to come.
Well, there we did. We went around the corners, all four corners. It's time.
Oh, you got another button.
Oh yeah, it's time. It's time for the Supersonic Minute. Yes. No, that's the wrong button. It's this other. There we go. That's what they're going to play at the Supersonics games, if all goes according to plan. But there was a hiccup this week.
Yeah.
With the TV digital rights deal. That's something that we've talked about almost every week here on Inside the Arena. I think a lot of people know that ESPN and TBS, TNT, and Amazon and NBC, they've all been part of this discussion. Adam Silver came out last week, as we discussed in depth here on Inside the Arena, and said that he felt like they had signed off on this stage. Then there was a question of whether TBS, TNT would attempt to match the offer by Amazon of close to $2 billion a year. TBS, TNT have now said they will exercise their option to try and match that deal. They did that this week. That sets the wheels in motion for really a lot of unknowns and potentially a legal fight with TBS and TNT and the NBA. It seems like the NBA would like to divorce themselves of TBS, TNT, but they would like to stay married. And really that applies to this whole conversation about bringing back the Sonics to Seattle when we know that Adam Silver has said this deal needs to get finalized before they can really, in earnest, his words, begin an expansion discussion this fall. It seems like a bit of a hiccup and a bit of an unknown here as we continue to follow that story.
Yeah, that was my first and most prominent thought when I saw that. Is this going to delay a timeline that we've been talking about that in theory could have meant solid concrete news potentially about our Sonics maybe at the turn of the new year or in that ballpark? You wonder if this has an impact on that.
Well, you know who else may have something to say about the Sonics?
Absolutely.
The man, the myth, the legend.
We love this guy.
From Kent, Washington, Kenny Mayne. He joins us now because Kenny is here really to talk about this great new documentary that you and I have watched
and enjoyed thoroughly.
Yes, with a misspelling from KOMO's own Joe Wren. Wiffleball. Kenny Mayne, thank you. We know you. We love you from ESPN, but also Dancing with the Stars, as we mentioned off the top. We've seen you at the Sports Star of the Year multiple times, the Seattle Sports Commission. We've seen you at the Northwest Emmys. How are you? Where are you right now? Because you're always moving around the world.
I'm from Kent, but right now I'm in Connecticut, and still awake at my age, 10:14. That's pretty late as we tape this thing, but I'm here for you. And by the way, you mentioned Brent Barry. Love him. I have a great short Brent Barry story. And in fact, it figures in the whole Sonic thing because he was with the Sonics at the time. I was in Seattle doing another one of my pretend football stories. We had a guy named Max Kim from South Korea, and we pretended that he was on the Seahawks. They signed him for $1 billion because they wanted to win now. That was the premise. Anyway, I think this was year 2. We did it for 10 years in a row. And Brent Barry we're interviewing before a Sonics preseason game. And we finished up with him. He said, "What are you doing tonight?" And we said, "What do you mean? We're at your game." And he said, "Do you want to go to Pearl Jam instead?" And he told me to go to the locker room, dig in his jeans for his keys, go out to he had like a VW bus hippie van, 2 Pearl Jam tickets to Ben Arroyo, which is one of the legendary shows of all time for Pearl Jam. They debuted Man of the Hour at that show. So we left the Sonics preseason game. It didn't matter. And got our story. And I've been friends with Brent ever since.
That's an incredible story.
That is a great story.
Thank you for sharing that. Another great story. I don't need to tell you, but I was into Wiffleball the whole time. Just for our audience that may not be familiar with this documentary, tell us what compelled you to do it, and of course, the story that you tell in it. That man, it's like a roller coaster ride trying to find out the answer to this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it emanated from my time at Channel 11 KSTW. In fact, I think I shot it in maybe my last month or so when I was there. This is the August of '89. Ken Griffey Jr. is a rookie. Harold Reynolds and Griffey showed up at the Seattle Science Center, Pacific Science Center, I guess technically. Anyway, I didn't know what we were going to do, but we stumbled upon a wiffle ball speed pitch machine at the Science Center, and Griffey and I threw. And for all these years, I've maintained that I beat him in the speed. They had a radar gun that wasn't very reliable, by the way. And I ran into him a couple years ago, and somehow he mentioned it, and it just hit me like, why don't I just do kind of a silly comedy / real documentary about that event? Because I still had the tape. The tape, I've moved 5 times or 10 times since. It's been in garages and basements and back of trucks and wherever it was. And we couldn't find a way to transfer the tape because it was so old. It was called Beta SP, which used to be fancy, but this is 1989 we're talking about. And I finally remembered my old friend Joe Wren at KOMO. If anybody would have the wherewithal to be able to transfer that tape, it would be him. And in fact, you guys still have that kind of machine.
Yeah.
We have the big revelation of what's on the machine. We got Ken Burns is in it. The University of Washington professor's in it, the head of Wiffleball, the president's in it. I do my commentary along the way. And it's like a true story. Sort of the real story is like my love of Wiffleball, growing up as a little kid, playing it. All these years later, look at me, I'm throwing wiffle balls with one of the best players to ever play baseball. And then we go to find out the truth of what really happened that day.
And Ken Griffey, did he not want to participate? Did you reach out to him? Because he is the central figure in all of this.
He's in there, but he's not in there in 2023 or 4, whenever we shot it. No. He's well represented though. And it's still, like I said, the real story is the telling of the story. It's sort of like, as we're showing what's happening in the show, we're also showing how we're making it, waiting for Ken Burns, looking at our watch, me deciding what clothes to put on, the things we stumble upon. We kind of snuck our way into the Science Center. We weren't really supposed to be there, but some girl who was in charge is like, it's about what? It's Griffey, Wiffleball, come on in. So ultimately, we do tell a borderline compelling story about the truth of what happened.
Oh, it borderline. No, that was fun stuff. I've actually watched it several times, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Is some people may have that not a story like this, but oh yeah, I beat so and so back when, and they've been telling it at parties and events forever. You took a story like that, and you took us on this, as I mentioned a moment ago, a roller coaster ride. What is it about? And it's the same thing that folks enjoyed watching all those years on TV, whether it was here in Seattle or it was on ESPN or wherever it may have been. What is it about the way you see those kinds of stories and the way you're able to tell it in that unique way that makes it so enjoyable for folks?
Well, it's funny. A lot of the football story I was talking about where Brent Barry was in it, those were true fictional stories. We wrote a script, told people what to say. This was like an earnest documentary. Like I did it in a little quirky way, but it was really trying to get to the truth of what happened. And you saw it at the Seattle Film Festival, which was really fun. That was a great event to go to. We think we're close to a distribution deal with someone to get it out and let other people see it. And hopefully it's sort of a proof of concept that I might be able to do other ones kind of along these lines. And it was fun doing it. It was fun having no boss and just doing it how I wanted to do it. We had great music participation. Pearl Jam lent us a song. The Head and the Heart sang the credit song that I wrote. Local rapper Sam LaChow did an amazing job over that section where Keegan Hall, the great artist, is drawing a picture, with his charcoal. My brother-in-law, Robert Watson, did a great job on the score. So we had all sorts of good contributions, and it just kind of made the whole thing better and gave it more life. And it was really fun seeing it at that film festival because that was the first time I'd seen it on a bigger screen. I've just been watching it on my computer, which I need to clean still. And, you know, it's totally different from, I think you'd agree, you've seen it both ways, that seeing it on a real screen versus seeing it just on your computer.
Yeah, I felt like we were in a theater at the film festival, but it had the feeling like you were watching Twister, whatever the big film might be, as you know too well. You know, and I want to say this has been enjoyable for folks here at KOMO because, granted, once I watched it, I had to show everybody, hey, come over here, you got to check this out. And of course, we all love Joe Wren, and he is a star, if I may.
He is
in this. Take me through your relationship with KOMO's resident video editor and
historian.
I call him Uncle Joe. We would be lost without him.
Joe Wren. Joe Wren and I used to play softball together on a team with Rob Weller and some other folks. And when I was freelancing for ESPN, like for 3 or 4 years before I got finally got hired, this is after leaving Channel 11. I would use KOMO principally as my place to go and screen tapes or to edit or to ship it to ESPN on a satellite. So I'd already been in there a million times, you know, through the years back when I was coming up, and always had a good relationship with Joe, and he quickly wanted to help, and you guys were nice enough to let us shoot inside there as well. So that's like a key scene to the whole movie, is the revelation of what's on the tape.
And
although Joe can't spell wiffle ball.
Yeah, I'm a purist. Wiffle ball has no H. People think it should, but it's Wiffle. And they told me they trademarked the color yellow of the bat. Somehow, Wiffle Ball Inc. has patented that color yellow. I assume you can do other yellows and get away with it, but it's amazing. The headquarters of Wiffle Ball is in Connecticut, and the guy, they told me the whole story. The grandfather who, you know, came up with the game, he was out of work, and he wanted to develop this wiffle ball thing, and he cashed in his life insurance and pretended to his wife that he had a different job, but every day he would go off and work on the wiffle ball thing, and turned out it worked out pretty well. It's been going since the 1950s, I think, and they make millions of wiffle balls. They got a factory, and they just pump them out, and they're shipped all over the world. And we grew up with it. I grew up on Star Lake down in Kent off of 272. And we played from 9 in the morning till 9 at night all summer long, every summer as little kids, even into high school and later. Mark Sansevier, my good friend, broke Babe Ruth's home run record in one summer. We used to keep stats on that. So we'd make my sister sing the anthem. We'd light off fireworks, and Chuck either use sugar or flour, whatever was most abundant in my mom's kitchen. We would sneak that out and line the field. So yeah, we took wiffle ball very seriously, and it's funny. It's around the country. There's a whole bunch of leagues, and there's televised games even, and people have these thematic parks. So it's still there. In fact, there's one in Woodway. I just made contact with them.
That's awesome. Well, first of all, this is like, you know, back when DVDs were still a thing, and you had like the bonus stuff after a movie. That's what we're getting right here, which I enjoy. Second, I was also thrilled to find out that you were from the Star Lake area. That's the general region I call home, and this is not giving away anything in this incredible storytelling. You threw faster than Griffey, though, right?
On tape, it appears we tied.
Mm-hmm.
I think my cameraman, God love him, Jan Kuwahara, I think he double punched. You know, every camera person knows that mistake. And you hit the button once, and you hit it again, and you kill the machine now, and you're looking through the viewfinder, and you think you're rolling, and you're not. But maybe we just tied. It really doesn't matter now. That we got to the truth, and getting to the truth is more important than whatever the truth was.
Well, certainly when you get that distribution, we'll let fans and everybody know where to get it, because this is something people have to check. I know Chris and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I loved anybody who's worked in TV news. I don't want to spoil too much of the documentary, but I got a kick out of the whole Pacific Science Center part where you're walking around on campus and they're like, no, you got to talk to this person. You got to talk to this person. What exactly are you doing? I think about wiffle ball. And next thing you know, like magic happens and you're inside and all of that. You know, this is just one of the things that you're involved in, Kenny. I know that I think a lot of people know your trajectory from the KSTW days here locally, but also to ESPN. And you've been involved in a lot of different projects. And as a TV news guy, that's why I appreciated that moment in the film. this industry has changed quite a bit. I mean, this is Niko and I like to joke, this is a 3-point play now. We're doing audio, YouTube, and TV with this show. You're also involved in a bunch of different projects. We've seen you involved in the gambling sphere. We've seen you in commercials. We've seen you now in this documentary. As you now get further and further away from ESPN and this kind of world of streaming versus cable, I mean, how do you think this industry has just changed in the last couple of years?
Oh, immensely. Yeah, even just in the last few, definitely over the time, because everybody always talks about like the old Sports Center days, and I think the shows are still very good. They have great people and they put on great shows. They're probably cleaner than the old shows, but the difference was in the 90s, you didn't know the result of the Marlins, Cubs, or whoever the heck you were interested in, right? You had to watch that night, unless you lived in one of those cities. Most of the rest of the country had no idea. The internet was just barely off the ground as far as the way we use it now. So obviously everything changed from that perspective, but also it's sort of been segmented even more and more and more, right? Like anybody can start a TikTok or an Instagram or a Twitter or YouTube, and do things that we couldn't do. When I was coming up, there were the 3 big Seattle stations and KSTW and 13 and PBS number 9. And a few radio stations. The sports radio wasn't nearly as prevalent back then, so the options were way more limited. But the funny thing with me is, when I came up, I wasn't even trying to be in sports. I wanted to be like serious newsman. I wanted to be Ken Burns or something eventually, or work for Frontline. That would have been my goal. But I sort of fell into doing sports because they added a weekend. Remember way back when, for those with longer memories, KSW just had Monday through Friday, the 10 o'clock news, an hour ahead of the rest. And there was no weekend shows at all. So we always joked internally, if there's news on the weekends, it's news to us. But they added a weekend show, and Jack Eddy was the news director. And he's like, hey, you played football, you're doing sports. So it just kind of happened that way. And I ended up kind of doing both for a while. And then I probably took the easier path and went towards sports.
Is that a good or bad thing that there's more options now versus even a couple of years ago? I mean, to be able to distribute a documentary like yours, or there's been all these 30 for 30 knockoffs now, and the streaming platforms. I mean, is there an argument that it's a good thing that there's more opportunities now for folks, or is it a bad thing, do you think? I
mean, look at how many choices we have as consumers, right? Gretchen and I pay full retail. We're not the greatest at we should probably do kind of an audit of what the heck we're even paying for. I feel like we do full cable and all the add-ons when you were supposed to get rid of cable and only do, but we just go for it all. But so yeah, as a consumer, not just watching your TV, but you got your computer and you got your phone. There's so many more things, and there's such great quality out there. Actually, I just watched the bad one. We just talked about that off camera, but in general, the choices. Usually, if there's more choices, if you make the right plays, you're going to see some good stuff. And if you're in the industry or trying to be in the industry, there are more avenues for you to avail yourself of. I think the whole thing about the death of local this or local that is, I think, somewhat untrue. People still rely, and my daughter is a newspaper writer in Georgia and writes for a local paper, and it really matters that people are covering local news. So I'm definitely against seeing some of the papers get wiped out. I think TV has held its own. It's just that the margins are much smaller, right? I mean, can you imagine back in the day being an executive at ABC or NBC or CBS? Like every single night you had 1/3 of America, right? Like, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller because the band got wider and wider. It's just kind of the way it is. We got more choices. And again, I think that's also good for people coming into it, because more chances to, maybe you have to do this job and take this other little job as your side gig and kind of put the two together until you figure it out.
Yeah, unique times. Kenny, I want to say something really quick here. When and if, let's say when, to be positive here, we get our Sonics back, we'll see you. You're going to be with us on opening night, right?
Oh, why that announcement hasn't already happened. I heard your explanation earlier about the TV hang up, and that's why there's a delay now. But what about the delay the last 5 years? What about... I mean, the complaint was we didn't have the right gym. they clearly have a state-of-the-art place. I've been to the Storm games and Kraken games. I saw Springsteen there. Like, it's an amazing building, and I love how they kind of like paid respect to the old building while modernizing it, by dropping it lower. There's no excuse to not have it, and there's so many NBA people I've talked to that miss going to Seattle, period. Just the trip to Seattle was one of their favorite ones, and the fact that Seattle's a major city, was it top 13, 15, whatever it is, market, and deserves a team. So I sure hope it comes back. I wanted LeBron and Bronny. They could be like the killers. Jamal come back for 1 year maybe, and get all the people that care about it and love it. Detlef, I know, wants to be a part, and Sigma wants to be a part. Lenny Wilkins wants to be a part. I'm leaving out a whole bunch of other names, I'm sure, but I think it's going to happen. I just wish it were sooner than later.
I hear you. And again, we can't wait to see opening night whenever it does happen, my friend. I really, honestly appreciate getting to talk to you these last few weeks, and certainly appreciate your time on this, and loved watching Wiffleball. I again, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
I want to give him one last chance here to talk about Run Freely, which has been something that you have been passionate about, and I've seen it a lot on social media, and there's quite a story to tell there as well. Give you a chance here. What is Run Freely all about, and the work you're doing with veterans, because it has been important. I know you've done a lot of work for veterans here in the past.
I wrecked my ankle playing football at UNLV long ago, 1980, last play of a game at Oregon, and played one more year actually. But every year after, more surgeries, more arthritis, and then I got old, and then it barely worked. But I found this guy named Ryan Blanc down in Gig Harbor at the Hanger Clinic, and he was making these devices for veterans who were in situations like me or worse, and walking with pain pretty much every day. And it's a device that you put on you put your leg into the device, then put that into your shoe. So you keep your bad leg, but you have this other thing on the outside of it that displaces all the pressure. So your bad ankle's just kind of along for the ride. So the day I got mine, Gretchen's in the other room here, and I remember calling her, and I couldn't even talk. I was like crying for 2 hours that I couldn't believe I'm running on a treadmill on day one. Like it's an unbelievable device that takes away the pain, lets you do things you can't do otherwise. And we both almost at the same time said, let's do something good about it. So we started a foundation called Run Freely. It's runfreely.org. And we've had amazing support. Jamal Crawford, Gary Payton, Steve Largent, Jerry Rice, Lenny Wilkins, Dale Earnhardt, Steve Kerr, Joe Montana helped us, Mike Penix helped us. I'm leaving out a whole bunch of other names. I apologize, but everybody's chipped in, not just with money, but just showing up or supporting it. The Rock did a little picture that helped promote it. We did a really cool thing with Penix at UW where he threw passes for money, and the money helped the next veteran. We did the same thing with Joe Montana at the Super Bowl, and we raised enough right away to call somebody and say, you're next. So we just kind of go $1 at a time. There's no building, there's no staff, nobody's taking money. All we do is raise money, tell the story, and then buy the next brace. And in fact, they don't like to use the word brace. It's a device. A brace you can get at Costco. No knock on Costco. But these are specially made just for you, right? They only fit one person. And it's less expensive than another surgery and all the drugs. And it's just a healthier way to do it. You do better therapy, like which I have done. I found better ways to manage it so I don't have like daily pain. But I just played golf in it yesterday. I was throwing footballs at Megatron's tournament last week. Calvin Johnson in Detroit had a football camp and a golf tournament. I threw like 500 passes. My arm hurt like heck, but I recovered from that as well. But the fact that I could run around on the field absolutely pain-free and help out these little kids, they were getting better instruction than mine. I'm sure that our receiver coaches were Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson. So that's pretty good. But anyway, look it up. The website tells the whole story. It's runfreely.org.
Well, there you go. Kenny Mayne, Run Freely. He's going to be at the opening night of the Sonics. He's got a Wiffleball documentary. He's involved in quite a bit. Kenny, thank you so much. Hey, we've got to do this.
And one last note. I know you guys.
Yes.
I know you guys were lamenting the Mariners had a 10 or 12 game lead or whatever, and it's disappeared. But it's good. It's sort of like if you're in golf and you start shooting a better score and you're mad when you hit that number that used to make you happy. So relatively speaking, what is it, late July, whenever you run this, they're still in it. 100% they're in it. I hope they make a move or two because historically they haven't been very aggressive. We can all agree. But I mean, most seasons, to say that they're in the fight at this point in the season, we're thrilled. Now it's disappointing they gave away that big cushion, but they've had some injuries and hopefully they get it back together. So I'd hold the faith for a while longer.
I'm with you. If you said to me in February, hey, the Mariners are going to be tied for first at the end of July, I would have probably taken that in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Just move to July. Yeah, exactly.
Kenny Mayne, thank you so much. Again, we'll give the applause.
Thank you so much, Kenny.
Thank you, Kenny.
See you guys. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We leave Kenny, and we have one more segment. The final buzzer.
Kenny was reading my mind because that was what I wanted to talk about. And you guys know this is my point in the show where I like to make a point. And it is just that if you told me in January or February that the Mariners would be tied for Houston for first place, I would have signed that in a heartbeat. Now, this is not to knock any fan that may be upset about the state of things after you lose a 10-game lead, and you lost it in just 24 games, which was 10 games faster than any other team in baseball history had done, at least in the last 40, 50 years. But here's what I want to say about that. Just have the faith a little bit longer. This isn't doing you a favor about being patient. This is just hang on. It's July. And you know what? If they don't make it and you've missed 2 out of the last 3 years, then we can have that discussion. But right now, we know that players have called that stadium an electric factory. If you have the means and you're able to just keep the faith a little bit longer, there can absolutely be an impact by folks being at T-Mobile Park. So just hang on a minute. Let's see what they do or don't do ahead of the trade deadline. And let's see what happens in these last 2 months. It's anybody's ball game. We'd like it to be a 10-game lead, but just hang on a minute. And if they don't make it in October, then we can just rant and rave all we want. But let's just hang on a minute and enjoy it because they are tied for first. And there's been many years they were 20 games out of first place in July.
You and Kenny Mayne have the cup half full. The Tridents are still up for you. And
at the moment,
the Tridents are not down. Why don't we end with this, though? It has been a great first 2 months of Inside the Arena. You just heard from the great Kenny Mayne. If you've been listening to us every week, you've heard from the former president of Fox Sports Networks, Bob Thompson. He was on last week. Brianna Treat from Climate Pledge Arena talking about sustainability in the environment. Doug Baldwin, Cliff Averill, Caitlin Clark, Lenny Wilkins, who just got name dropped 5 times during this episode. WSU Athletic Director Ann McCoy, World Cup organizers, all the stuff that is off the field, off the ice, off the court, we have talked about here inside the arena, and we always close with the man, David Lee.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.